Effective ways to set and maintain boundaries for greater respect and well-being. Brought to you by Holistic Literary. In a world that constantly demands our time, energy, and attention, setting boundaries has become an essential practice for safeguarding our well-being and maintaining respect in all areas of life. As many spiritual teachers, wellness experts, and personal growth authors remind us, boundaries are not walls, but bridges to healthier relationships, both with others and ourselves. They define what is acceptable in our interactions and help preserve our peace, energy, and emotional health. From Dr. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability and courage to the teachings of spiritual leaders like Eckhart Tolle and Pema Chödrön, we learn that boundaries are an act of self-respect and empowerment. By setting clear limits, we communicate our needs and values to others, fostering an environment of mutual respect. More importantly, boundaries teach us to honor ourselves by saying no when necessary and asserting what is essential for our own well-being. In this guide, we'll explore effective ways to set and maintain boundaries for greater respect and well-being. These practical steps will empower you to establish boundaries with clarity, uphold them with confidence, and respond assertively when they are crossed. By mastering the art of boundary setting, you'll cultivate a life of balance, self-respect, and deeper connections with those around you. Key themes. 1. The importance of boundaries for self-respect and empowerment. Boundaries as a reflection of self-worth. How boundaries protect emotional, physical, and mental well-being. Empowerment through boundary setting. Defining your limits to others. 2. Defining different types of boundaries in your life. Emotional boundaries. Knowing when and how to express your feelings. Physical boundaries. Maintaining personal space and comfort levels. Verbal boundaries. Addressing how you want to be spoken to and treated. 3. The power of clear and direct communication. Using assertive language to communicate boundaries effectively. The difference between passive and direct communication when setting limits. Examples of clear boundary statements for various situations. 4. How to respond when boundaries are crossed. The importance of immediate and calm reactions. How to address boundary breaches assertively without being confrontational. Building resilience and consistency in enforcing your boundaries. 5. Taking action and ownership of your boundaries. Understanding that boundaries are proactive, not reactive. The significance of taking action whenever a boundary is crossed. How to ensure consistency in maintaining boundaries and not tolerating oversteps. 6. Long-term benefits of strong boundaries. Increased respect from others as a result of consistent boundary setting. Improved mental peace, energy conservation, and emotional health. How strong boundaries lead to healthier relationships and a more balanced life. Chapter 1. The importance of boundaries for self-respect and empowerment. At its core, setting boundaries is about affirming your self-worth and taking ownership of your well-being. Whether in relationships at work or within yourself, boundaries are vital tools that enable you to define what is and isn't acceptable in your life. As Brené Brown, a thought leader in vulnerability and personal development, often emphasizes, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. This courage is central to maintaining respect for yourself and fostering healthier, more respectful interactions with others. Boundaries as a reflection of self-worth. Your boundaries are a direct reflection of how much you value yourself. When you set clear limits, you send a message to both yourself and others. Your needs, feelings, and time matter. Without firm boundaries, you may find yourself overcommitting, being drained by toxic relationships, or sacrificing your own well-being to please others. This lack of self-respect leads to emotional exhaustion, resentment, and a weakened sense of self. Authors like Dr. Nedra Glover-Tawwab, in her work Set Boundaries, Find Peace, highlight how poor boundary setting stems from low self-esteem and a fear of rejection. Conversely, setting boundaries is an act of self-love and self-care. By prioritizing your mental, emotional, and physical needs, you create a foundation for a healthier and more fulfilling life. This allows you to flourish in all areas, knowing that you are worth protecting and nurturing. Protecting emotional, physical, and mental well-being. When you establish boundaries, you are safeguarding your emotional, physical, and mental health. As Eckhart Tolle, spiritual teacher and author of The Power of Now, teaches, staying present and in tune with your own needs is key to maintaining inner peace. Boundaries are a way to ensure that you are not overwhelmed by external pressures or taken advantage of by others. For example, emotional boundaries. These protect your feelings and energy. When someone oversteps by unloading their emotions onto you or disrespecting your emotional space, it can drain your mental energy. Establishing limits, such as saying, "I can't discuss this right now," helps you maintain emotional balance and avoid burnout. Physical boundaries. These involve your personal space and physical well-being. Whether it's needing time alone to recharge or establishing limits in intimate relationships, asserting these boundaries keeps you physically safe and comfortable. Mental boundaries. These pertain to your thoughts, beliefs, and intellectual space. If someone challenges your ideas in an aggressive or manipulative way, it can undermine your confidence and mental clarity. By asserting mental boundaries, you protect your right to think freely and form your own opinions without undue influence. In her research, Brené Brown reminds us that a lack of boundaries can lead to resentment and emotional exhaustion, which in turn affects mental health. When we honor our limits, we guard against this erosion of well-being, creating space for healing, peace, and joy. Empowerment through boundary setting. Defining your limits to others. Boundary setting is one of the most empowering acts you can take in your life. As Pema Chödrön, a revered Buddhist nun and author of When Things Fall Apart, teaches, the act of standing firm in your truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is a gateway to personal freedom. Setting boundaries allows you to reclaim your power in relationships, work environments, and within yourself. When you clearly communicate your limits, you shift the dynamics in your life. You are no longer a passive participant, but an active creator of your reality. As you assert your boundaries, you teach others how to treat you with respect and dignity. Empowerment through boundary setting also allows you to filter out what doesn't serve your highest good, ensuring that only positive, supportive, and mutually respectful interactions fill your life. For example, in a professional setting, saying, "I won't be available outside of working hours," asserts that your personal time is valuable and protects against burnout. In relationships, expressing, "I need time for myself to recharge," reinforces the idea that you must first be full in order to give. The act of defining these boundaries is liberating. You reclaim your energy and time, and you create space for what matters most. It is an acknowledgement that you are worthy of respect, and you deserve to live a life aligned with your needs and values. Boundaries as an ongoing practice. It's important to remember that setting boundaries is not a one-time event, but an ongoing practice. You must constantly evaluate and refine your boundaries as you grow and change. As Dr. Brené Brown states, boundaries are not about keeping others out. They are about ensuring that your space remains sacred and that only those who honor it can enter. Empowerment comes from consistently upholding your boundaries, even when it's difficult. It's about making the commitment to yourself that you will not tolerate disrespect, whether from others or from yourself. In time, as you continue to honor your limits, you'll find that you attract more positive, respectful relationships and experiences into your life. Conclusion. In summary, boundaries are a reflection of your self-worth and a necessary component for protecting your emotional, physical, and mental well-being. Empowerment comes through clearly defining and maintaining your limits, which allows you to create a life that aligns with your values and brings you peace. By embracing the ongoing practice of boundary setting, you take control of your life, creating an environment of respect, self-love, and empowerment. Chapter 2. Defining different types of boundaries in your life. Establishing clear boundaries is not just about saying no to external demands. It's a conscious effort to create a life that protects your emotional, physical, and mental space. Boundaries are integral to preserving our sense of self and ensuring healthy interactions with the world around us. As Dr. Henry Cloud, co-author of Boundaries, When to Say Yes, How to Say No to Take Control of Your Life, states, boundaries define us. They define what is me and what is not me. In this chapter, we'll explore 3 fundamental types of boundaries: emotional, physical, and verbal. Each of these areas requires unique attention to ensure that you're not only protecting your well-being, but also fostering relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. Emotional boundaries. Knowing when and how to express your feelings. Emotional boundaries are the invisible lines that help you maintain a healthy emotional state while interacting with others. These boundaries protect your inner world, your feelings, thoughts, and sense of self, from being overwhelmed or manipulated by external pressures. Why emotional boundaries matter. As Brené Brown emphasizes in her work on vulnerability, emotional boundaries are key to avoiding overexposure to your emotional landscape. Without them, you risk emotional burnout, dependency, or becoming overly involved in others' emotions at the expense of your own well-being. Emotional boundaries help you regulate how much emotional energy you share with others and how much you allow yourself to absorb from them. Setting emotional boundaries. Setting emotional boundaries involves recognizing your emotional capacity and clearly communicating your limits. Knowing when to say no to emotional requests or when to disengage from draining conversations is essential to protecting your mental health. For instance, if someone continuously unloads their personal issues onto you, it's important to express, "I understand you're going through something difficult, but I need some space right now." Additionally, knowing how to express your feelings is equally critical. When you bottle up emotions, you risk emotional overload, but oversharing or expressing emotions at inappropriate times can also cause complications. Emotional boundaries allow you to share your feelings when it's right for you. Saying, "I'm not ready to talk about this right now, but I will when I'm comfortable," establishes your emotional boundary and ensures you're not forced into a vulnerable space before you're ready. Physical boundaries. Maintaining personal space and comfort levels continue. Without physical boundaries, you may feel uncomfortable, unsafe, or violated, even if unintentionally. These boundaries help you establish what kind of physical interaction is acceptable and ensure your personal space is respected. Whether it's the way someone touches you, enters your personal space, or expects physical closeness, defining these limits is key to preserving your well-being and autonomy. Setting physical boundaries. Physical boundaries can vary greatly depending on the individual and the context. For example, what feels comfortable in a professional setting may differ from what feels right in personal relationships. It's important to clearly communicate your comfort levels in any situation. Personal space. If someone frequently invades your personal space, you might say, "I need a little more space to feel comfortable." This is a polite yet assertive way to ensure that your physical needs are respected. Touch. Not everyone is comfortable with being touched, even in casual settings. Establishing physical boundaries might include saying, "I'm not really comfortable with hugs. A handshake is fine." This clearly communicates your preferences without leaving room for misunderstanding. Privacy. Physical boundaries also encompass the need for privacy. Whether at home, at work, or in public spaces, you have the right to control access to your physical environment. For instance, stating, "I need some time alone to recharge," is a way of affirming your need for personal space. Physical boundaries also extend to your body's health and energy. For example, if someone is asking too much of you physically, for example, helping with tasks when you're exhausted or unwell, it's crucial to say, "I'm unable to help with this right now because I need to prioritize my health." Protecting your physical boundaries is a vital act of self-care. Verbal boundaries. Addressing how you want to be spoken to and treated. Verbal boundaries are about defining how others communicate with you. These boundaries set the tone for respectful, kind, and constructive interactions. Without verbal boundaries, you may be subjected to hurtful language, unwarranted criticism, or even verbal abuse, which can erode your sense of self-worth and emotional stability. Why verbal boundaries matter. Words carry immense power. They can uplift or degrade, inspire or harm. In her work on shame and resilience, Brené Brown often underscores the importance of setting verbal boundaries to prevent others from inflicting emotional harm through negative speech. Verbal boundaries also help prevent misunderstandings by ensuring that communication is clear, respectful, and aligned with your values. Setting verbal boundaries. Setting verbal boundaries involves letting people know how you expect to be spoken to and how you will not tolerate certain forms of communication. It's essential to express these boundaries assertively, without aggression or defensiveness. Respectful communication. If someone speaks to you in a disrespectful or harsh manner, you can respond with, "I won't accept being spoken to like that." This asserts that you expect kindness and respect in your interactions. Criticism and feedback. There is a difference between constructive feedback and unwarranted criticism. If you're receiving unnecessary or harmful critiques, you can say, "I appreciate feedback, but I prefer it to be constructive and focused on solutions." This sets the expectation that feedback should be supportive, not demeaning. Tone and volume. Sometimes, the tone or volume of speech can be more damaging than the words themselves. If someone is raising their voice or using a condescending tone, you can calmly say, "I'm willing to continue this conversation," but not if the tone remains disrespectful. Verbal boundaries also apply to how you speak to yourself. It's important to be mindful of your internal dialogue. If you often speak harshly to yourself, you may need to set boundaries within your own mind, learning to replace negative self-talk with more compassionate language. Integrating boundaries into daily life. Defining emotional, physical, and verbal boundaries requires self-awareness and practice. It's about recognizing your limits and needs and being willing to advocate for them in a healthy, constructive way. These boundaries are not fixed, but can evolve over time as you gain more insight into what makes you feel safe, respected, and empowered. Enforcing boundaries gently but firmly. Once your boundaries are established, the next step is consistently upholding them. Others may not always understand your boundaries at first, and some may try to push them. It's crucial to respond calmly but assertively when your boundaries are tested. By doing so, you reinforce your self-respect and show others how you expect to be treated. If someone repeatedly crosses a boundary, it's essential to reaffirm your stance. For example, if a friend continues to speak to you in a way that makes you uncomfortable despite your previous conversations, you could say, "I've mentioned before that I don't appreciate being spoken to in that tone. If it continues, I'll need to reconsider how much time we spend together." This communicates both the importance of your boundary and the consequences of crossing it. Self-reflection and boundary adjustment. As you grow, your boundaries may need to evolve. Regular reflection helps you stay in tune with your current emotional, physical, and verbal needs. Journaling, meditation, or simply taking time to evaluate your experiences can help you identify where new boundaries are needed or where old ones may need reinforcement. Conclusion. Emotional, physical, and verbal boundaries are essential for fostering healthy relationships, protecting your well-being, and empowering yourself in every area of life. By setting clear boundaries, you communicate your values and needs to others, creating an environment where respect, trust, and understanding can thrive. These boundaries aren't rigid walls, but flexible, evolving tools that help you navigate life with clarity, peace, and confidence. As you continue to define and uphold these boundaries, you'll find that they lead to more fulfilling interactions and a deeper sense of self-respect. Chapter 3: The Power of Clear and Direct Communication. Clear and direct communication is one of the most powerful tools in setting and maintaining boundaries. As experts in psychology and communication, such as Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, creator of nonviolent communication, emphasize, how we communicate our needs and boundaries determines how they are respected. Assertive language, not aggressive or passive, allows us to convey our limits with clarity and confidence, ensuring our relationships remain healthy and respectful. In this chapter, we will dive into the nuances of assertive communication, explore the difference between passive and direct communication, and provide real-world examples of clear boundary statements that can help you maintain your well-being and personal power. The importance of assertive communication. Assertive communication is the cornerstone of boundary setting. It allows you to express your thoughts, feelings, and needs clearly while respecting the rights and feelings of others. As Brené Brown says, "Clear is kind, unclear is unkind." This means that being direct about your boundaries is not only helpful to you, but also to others, as it reduces misunderstandings and resentment. Assertive language focuses on stating your needs or limits in a way that is firm yet respectful. It helps you avoid the extremes of passive communication, where your needs are ignored, and aggressive communication, where others may feel attacked. Instead, assertive communication strikes a balance by being both direct and compassionate, leading to better understanding and healthier relationships. For example, assertive: "I'm not available for this project on the weekend, but I'm happy to help during work hours." Passive: "I guess I can help on the weekend, even though I was hoping for some rest." Aggressive. I can't believe you're asking me to work on the weekend. Don't you know I have a life? In the assertive example, the speaker is clear about their availability without undermining their own needs or attacking the other person. The difference between passive and direct communication. When setting boundaries, the way you communicate plays a crucial role in how others respond. There are 3 primary styles of communication: passive, assertive, and aggressive, and each has its own consequences for boundary setting. 1. Passive communication. Passive communication involves avoiding confrontation and often results in unclear or unspoken boundaries. People who communicate passively may fear rejection, conflict, or being seen as selfish, and as a result, they let their boundaries be overstepped. This behavior often leads to frustration, resentment, and burnout because their needs are consistently unmet. Example of passive communication. A friend repeatedly shows up late to meetings. You feel disrespected but don't want to cause tension, so you say nothing and internalize your frustration. Eventually, the anger builds up, and you either lash out unexpectedly or withdraw from the relationship. The impact of passive communication. When we communicate passively, we fail to express our needs, allowing others to dictate how we are treated. This erodes self-esteem and creates a cycle where our boundaries are ignored or violated because they are never clearly stated. 2. Aggressive communication. Aggressive communication is the opposite of passive communication, often characterized by hostility, blaming, or attacking. People using aggressive communication may dominate conversations, disrespect others' boundaries, or create tension by focusing more on winning a confrontation than resolving the issue. While aggressive communication might seem effective in the short term, it tends to damage relationships and instill fear rather than respect. Example of aggressive communication. Your friend shows up late again and you snap at them saying, "You're always so inconsiderate. Can't you ever be on time?" This aggressive response puts the other person on the defensive and may escalate the situation into an argument. The impact of aggressive communication. Aggressive communication alienates people and often leads to unnecessary conflict. Instead of fostering respect, it creates fear and resentment, making it harder to maintain healthy boundaries in the long run. 3. Assertive communication. Assertive communication strikes the balance between passive and aggressive communication. It allows you to express your needs clearly and respectfully while considering the feelings of others. Assertiveness involves stating your boundaries directly, maintaining eye contact, and using calm, confident body language. Example of assertive communication. When your friend is late again, you say, "I notice that you've been late a few times. It's important to me that we respect each other's time. Could we plan our meetings at a time that works better for you so we can both be on time?" The impact of assertive communication. Assertive communication fosters respect and mutual understanding. By being clear and direct without aggression, you teach others how to treat you, and you reinforce your own self-worth. This approach reduces conflict and builds stronger, healthier relationships based on trust and respect. Examples of clear boundary statements for various situations. Clear boundary statements are short, direct, and leave little room for misinterpretation. They communicate your needs without ambiguity and help reinforce the boundaries you're setting. Below are examples of boundary statements for different areas of life. 1. Workplace boundaries. Boundaries at work are essential for preventing burnout and ensuring a healthy work-life balance. When declining additional work, I'm currently at capacity with my workload and won't be able to take on anything additional right now. When asked to work outside of hours, I'm happy to work on this during business hours, but I'm not available after 6 p.m. When clarifying your role, that task falls outside of my job responsibilities, but I can point you to the right person to help. 2. Personal relationship boundaries. In personal relationships, boundaries help maintain mutual respect and ensure that your emotional needs are met. When setting emotional boundaries, I understand you're upset, but I need some space to process my thoughts before we continue this conversation. When addressing disrespectful behavior, I feel uncomfortable when you speak to me like that. I need you to use a different tone if we're going to discuss this. When refusing a favor, I'm unable to help with that right now, but I hope you can find the support you need. 3. Social boundaries. In social settings, boundaries help you manage your energy and social interactions effectively. When declining an invitation, thank you for inviting me, but I'm going to stay in and rest tonight. When protecting your personal space, I need some space right now, can we catch up later? When dealing with oversharing or emotional dumping, I care about what you're going through, but I don't have the emotional energy to talk about this right now. 4. Family boundaries. Family relationships often require clear boundaries to maintain balance and respect. When setting limits with parents or siblings, I love spending time with you, but I need some time alone to recharge. Let's plan another day to catch up. When handling unsolicited advice, I appreciate your advice, but I've already made my decision and am comfortable with it. When asserting your autonomy, I value your input, but I'm going to handle this situation in my own way. Conclusion. The power of clear and direct communication lies in its ability to foster understanding, respect, and cooperation. By using assertive language, you communicate your boundaries effectively and empower yourself to maintain healthy relationships without sacrificing your needs. Clear communication prevents misunderstandings, reduces resentment, and reinforces your self-worth. The difference between passive and direct communication is profound, and by choosing the assertive path, you create a space where your boundaries are honored, your well-being is protected, and your relationships thrive. Chapter 4. How to respond when boundaries are crossed. No matter how clearly and consistently you set your boundaries, there will be moments when someone crosses them. Whether intentional or not, these boundary breaches test your ability to stand up for yourself and reinforce the limits you've established. How you respond in these moments is crucial for ensuring that your boundaries are respected in the future. In this chapter, we will explore the importance of immediate and calm reactions when your boundaries are crossed, how to assertively address boundary breaches without escalating the situation into confrontation, and how to build resilience and consistency in enforcing your boundaries over time. The importance of immediate and calm reactions. When someone crosses your boundaries, it's essential to address the situation immediately. Delaying your response can lead to confusion, misunderstandings, and resentment. Addressing boundary breaches in the moment shows that your limits are firm and important to you. It also prevents the issue from escalating into a larger conflict or from being repeated. Why immediate action matters. Taking immediate action when a boundary is crossed sends a clear message that you take your boundaries seriously. If you allow boundary violations to go unaddressed for too long, the other person may assume that the boundary wasn't important or that you're willing to tolerate certain behaviors. This can create a cycle of repeated overstepping, leading to frustration and tension. For example, in a work environment, if a colleague interrupts you during meetings despite your earlier request to avoid interruptions, addressing it calmly and immediately, "I would like to finish my point before we move forward," reinforces your boundary in a timely manner. Delaying the response or letting it slide might signal that the behavior is acceptable. In personal relationships, if a partner dismisses your emotional needs after you've communicated them, waiting too long to address the breach can build resentment. Instead, responding immediately with, "I need you to respect my feelings, and this conversation isn't helping," allows you to assert your needs without the issue snowballing. Remaining calm under pressure. When your boundaries are crossed, it's easy to become frustrated, angry, or defensive. However, reacting from a place of heightened emotion can escalate the situation and create unnecessary conflict. Remaining calm, even when you feel disrespected, helps you maintain control of the conversation and reinforces your ability to handle boundary violations with confidence. Calm communication allows you to be assertive without being aggressive. By keeping your emotions in check, you can express your boundaries more clearly, which increases the likelihood that the other person will listen and respect your limits. Moreover, a calm response prevents the conversation from spiraling into defensiveness or hostility. Tips for staying calm. 1. Take a breath. Before responding, take a deep breath to center yourself. This small pause can help you collect your thoughts and approach the situation with clarity. 2. Stick to facts. Focus on the specific behavior that crossed your boundary, rather than letting emotions cloud the issue. For instance, say, "I felt disrespected when you interrupted me," rather than, "You never listened to me." The former keeps the conversation focused on the action, while the latter can lead to defensiveness. 3. Stay grounded. Remind yourself of your right to set boundaries, and that addressing a breach is not a personal attack on the other person, but a necessary step for maintaining healthy interactions. Addressing boundary reaches assertively without being confrontational. Assertiveness is key when addressing boundary violations, but many people confuse assertiveness with confrontation. Assertiveness is about standing up for your rights and communicating your needs clearly, without aggression or hostility. It is possible, and essential, to address boundary breaches firmly and assertively while maintaining a respectful tone. The role of assertive communication. Assertive communication allows you to express your needs without undermining the other person or escalating the situation into a conflict. It involves using clear, direct language that leaves no room for ambiguity. This contrasts with passive communication, where you might avoid speaking up, or aggressive communication, where you might express your frustration through anger or hostility. Key elements of assertive communication. 1. Use I statements. When addressing a boundary breach, focus on how the behavior affects you rather than blaming the other person. For example, saying, "I feel uncomfortable when you raise your voice," is more effective than, "You're always yelling at me." I statements reduce defensiveness and keep the conversation centered on your needs. 2. Be direct and specific. Vague statements can create confusion. Instead, be clear about the specific behavior that crossed your boundary and what you need moving forward. For instance, "I need you to stop discussing this topic with me" is direct, while saying, "I don't really like talking about that," leaves too much room for misinterpretation. 3. Maintain a neutral tone. Assertiveness isn't about demanding or dominating. A calm, neutral tone helps convey that you are serious about your boundary without escalating the situation. Examples of assertive, non-confrontational responses. Here are some examples of how to respond assertively to boundary breaches in a way that addresses the issue without creating unnecessary conflict. In the workplace. Boundary breach. A colleague assigns you tasks outside your scope of work without asking. Assertive response. I appreciate your trust in me, but that task isn't part of my role. I'm happy to help within the limits of my responsibilities, but I can't take this on right now. In personal relationships. Boundary breach. A friend constantly changes plans at the last minute, leaving you feeling disregarded. Assertive response. I feel frustrated when plans are changed last minute because it disrupts my schedule. In the future, I need more notice if we're going to reschedule. In family dynamics. Boundary breach. A family member frequently criticizes your life choices despite being asked not to. Assertive response. I've asked before that we not discuss my personal decisions. If this continues, I will need to take some space from these conversations. Building resilience and consistency in enforcing your boundaries. Setting boundaries is only half the battle. Enforcing them consistently is what ensures they are respected over time. When someone crosses a boundary, your ability to respond assertively and enforce consequences when needed is critical to maintaining that boundary's strength. Building resilience means standing firm in your boundaries even when it's difficult, and consistency ensures that over time, people learn to respect your limits. Why consistency is key? Consistency is crucial because boundaries that are only enforced sometimes are not really boundaries at all. They are suggestions. If you don't consistently uphold your boundaries, people may start to test or ignore them, leading to a cycle of boundary breaches that erode your sense of control and self-worth. For example, in relationships, if you only sometimes enforce your boundary about needing personal space after social events, your partner may assume that your need for space is flexible. This can lead to ongoing frustration as your boundary is repeatedly overlooked. In the workplace, if you initially state that you won't respond to emails after hours but occasionally make exceptions, colleagues may feel that you are available whenever they need you, leading to burnout. Building resilience in upholding boundaries. Resilience is the ability to stand firm in your boundaries even when faced with pushback, guilt-tripping, or emotional discomfort. Boundaries often challenge the expectations others have of you, and not everyone will respond well to them at first. It's important to remember that upholding boundaries is not about pleasing others. It's about protecting your well-being. Here are some strategies for building resilience. 1. Reaffirm your values. Remind yourself of why the boundary is important. For instance, if someone pushes back on your boundary around work-life balance, remember that protecting your time is essential for your mental health and productivity. 2. Expect pushback. Understand that not everyone will immediately respect your boundaries, and that's okay. Pushback can come in the form of guilt-tripping, anger, or dismissiveness, but your job is to stay firm and consistent in your enforcement. 3. Practice self-compassion. Enforcing boundaries can be emotionally exhausting, especially if it creates tension or conflict. Practice self-compassion by acknowledging the difficulty of the situation and reaffirming that you deserve to have your boundaries respected. Staying consistent over time. Consistency is about showing up for yourself and your boundaries every time they are crossed. It requires ongoing attention and commitment. Here's how to ensure consistency over time. 1. Set consequences and follow through. When someone crosses a boundary, it's important to communicate the consequences clearly and follow through if the behavior continues. For example, if a colleague continues to assign you tasks outside your role, say, "If this happens again, I will need to speak to my manager about defining our roles more clearly." 2. Don't over-explain. When enforcing boundaries, it's easy to feel the need to over-explain or justify your limits. Avoid this. Keep your explanations simple and direct, and remember that you don't need to convince others of your right to set boundaries. 3. Stay calm in the face of repeated breaches. If someone repeatedly crosses your boundary despite your efforts, it's important to remain calm and firm. You may need to escalate the consequences, such as distancing yourself from the person or seeking mediation in a workplace scenario, but always stick to the boundary. Conclusion. Responding when boundaries are crossed is a vital skill that reinforces your sense of self-respect and personal power. By addressing boundary breaches immediately and calmly, using assertive communication, and remaining consistent in your enforcement, you teach others how to treat you and protect your well-being. Building resilience in upholding boundaries helps you stay firm, even when faced with pushback, and consistency ensures that your boundaries are respected over the long term. Together, these strategies create a life where your limits are honored and your relationships thrive in mutual respect. Chapter 5. Taking action and ownership of your boundaries. Establishing and maintaining boundaries is a proactive, ongoing process that requires conscious effort. Once you have identified your limits, it's essential to take ownership of them by consistently upholding your boundaries and addressing violations when they occur. This chapter explores how boundaries are proactive, the importance of responding when they are crossed, and how to maintain consistency in reinforcing your boundaries to ensure they are respected. Boundaries are proactive, not reactive. A common misconception about boundaries is that they are only necessary when a violation occurs. However, boundaries are most effective when they are set proactively, before an issue arises, creating a clear framework for what is and isn't acceptable in your relationships and interactions. Why being proactive matters. Being proactive with your boundaries means anticipating situations where your personal space, emotional energy, or time may be at risk and setting clear limits in advance. This allows you to assert control over your environment rather than reacting after your boundaries have been crossed. Proactive boundaries prevent miscommunication and help avoid resentment by clearly defining your expectations from the beginning. For example, in the workplace, you may proactively establish that you don't check work emails after hours. Communicating this boundary early prevents colleagues from expecting you to respond to late-night messages. In personal relationships, you might express early on that you need time to recharge after social events. This prevents feelings of overwhelm and ensures that others respect your need for solitude. Proactively setting boundaries also empowers you to live authentically. You aren't waiting for a situation to make you uncomfortable. Instead, you are taking charge of your time, energy, and well-being from the start. Taking action when a border is crossed. No matter how clearly you establish your boundaries, there will inevitably be moments when they are challenged. Whether intentional or not, people may test your limits, and how you respond in these moments is crucial. Taking immediate, decisive action is necessary to ensure that your boundaries are respected and that you maintain control over your well-being. The importance of immediate action. When a boundary is crossed, the longer you wait to address it, the more difficult it becomes to reinforce that boundary. Delaying action sends a message that your limits are flexible or negotiable, which can lead to further violations. Responding in the moment, or as soon as possible, signals that your boundaries are non-negotiable and must be respected. For instance, in a work setting, if a colleague repeatedly interrupts you during meetings, calmly stating, "I'd appreciate it if you let me finish my point before interjecting," addresses the behavior immediately and asserts your boundary. In personal relationships, if a friend frequently cancels plans last minute, saying, "It's important to me that we respect each other's time. If you continue to cancel, I won't be able to make plans with you in the future," directly confronts the issue and enforces your boundary. Immediate action does not need to be confrontational. It can be calm and assertive, but it must be firm. By addressing boundary violations as they happen, you reinforce your commitment to yourself and teach others how to interact with you. Consistent follow-through. Once you take action, it's crucial to follow through with the consequences of a boundary violation. For example, if someone consistently disregards your requests for personal space and you've already addressed it once, there should be a clear next step, whether that's limiting your interactions with that person or creating more distance in the relationship. Following through shows that your boundaries are not merely suggestions, but firm expectations. As author and boundaries expert Dr. Nedra Glover Tawwab emphasizes in Set Boundaries, Find Peace, boundaries without consequences are just suggestions. Following through on consequences is an act of self-respect, ensuring that you are not tolerating repeated oversteps. This might mean limiting contact with a person who continues to violate your emotional boundaries, or addressing workplace issues with a supervisor if colleagues persistently disregard your time. Maintaining consistency in border enforcement. Consistency is one of the most challenging aspects of boundary setting, but it's also one of the most important. Inconsistent boundaries can lead to confusion and mixed messages, making it difficult for others to understand what your limits are. When you uphold your boundaries consistently, you create an environment where others know what to expect and how to treat you. The danger of inconsistent boundaries. When you're inconsistent with enforcing boundaries, you inadvertently signal that your needs and limits aren't important. People may begin to test your boundaries, unsure of when they will be enforced and when they will be ignored. This erodes your self-respect and can lead to feelings of frustration, resentment, and burnout. For example, in relationships, if you sometimes allow a partner to speak to you disrespectfully, but other times react strongly, the inconsistency may lead them to believe that they can occasionally cross the line without consequence. In work scenarios, if you frequently stay late at the office after initially stating that you're unavailable outside of business hours, colleagues may begin to disregard your stated limits, assuming that you're flexible. Inconsistent boundaries create a cycle of boundary breaches, which can damage your relationships and affect your overall well-being. How to maintain consistency. Maintaining consistency in boundary enforcement requires vigilance, self-awareness, and commitment. Here are some strategies for staying consistent with your boundaries. 1. Reaffirm your boundaries regularly. Life is constantly changing, and so are your boundaries. Regularly revisit your limits to ensure they still align with your needs. If a boundary is no longer serving you, adjust it accordingly. This also allows you to reinforce your boundaries in your own mind, making it easier to maintain them in challenging situations. 2. Practice assertive communication. Clear and direct communication is essential for consistency. When setting a boundary, be concise and firm, and make sure to communicate any consequences if the boundary is crossed. The more consistently you communicate your needs, the easier it will be for others to understand and respect your limits. 3. Hold yourself accountable. Boundaries aren't just about managing others, they're about managing yourself as well. If you notice yourself bending your boundaries or allowing others to cross them without addressing it, pause and reflect. Ask yourself why you're compromising your limits and what steps you can take to reaffirm them. 4. Be willing to walk away. In some cases, maintaining a boundary means walking away from a relationship or situation that repeatedly disrespects your limits. This might involve distancing yourself from toxic people or stepping away from environments that don't respect your boundaries. Walking away is a powerful statement of self-respect and reinforces the message that your well-being comes first. Not tolerating oversteps. Taking ownership of your boundaries means standing firm in your decision not to tolerate repeated violations. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about defining how you will engage in relationships and situations. When someone repeatedly disregards your boundaries, it's crucial to take action by either enforcing consequences or reassessing the nature of the relationship. How to handle repeated border crossings. 1. Reassert the boundary firmly. If someone repeatedly crosses your boundary, it's important to reassert it with even more clarity. This might involve stating the boundary in stronger terms or outlining specific consequences if the behavior continues. For example, if you continue to speak to me this way, I will end the conversation. 2. Establish consequences and stick to them. If the boundary is crossed again, follow through with the consequences you have set. This reinforces the seriousness of the boundary and prevents future oversteps. 3. Decide on the future of the relationship. In cases where boundaries are consistently ignored despite your efforts, it may be necessary to distance yourself from the person or situation. Walking away or reducing contact isn't a failure. It's an act of self-preservation and respect for your own needs. Conclusion. Taking action and taking ownership of your boundaries is a proactive, empowering process that requires consistent effort and a commitment to self-respect. Boundaries are most effective when they are set proactively, and responding swiftly when they are crossed is essential to maintaining control over your well-being. By staying consistent and not tolerating boundary violations, you build a life that reflects your values and ensures that your emotional, physical, and mental health are protected. Chapter 6. Long-term benefits of strong boundaries. Establishing and maintaining strong boundaries is an investment in yourself and your well-being. While the initial process of setting boundaries can sometimes be uncomfortable or challenging, the long-term benefits far outweigh the short-term discomfort. Over time, clear and consistent boundaries transform your relationships, your mental health, and your overall quality of life. In this chapter, we'll explore how strong boundaries lead to increased respect from others, improved mental peace and emotional health, and ultimately, healthier relationships and a more balanced life. Increased respect from others. One of the most immediate and visible benefits of strong boundaries is the respect you gain from others. Boundaries send a clear message about your values and expectations, teaching people how to treat you. When you consistently enforce your boundaries, people recognize that you respect yourself, and as a result, they begin to respect you more as well. How boundaries command respect. As Dr. Brené Brown emphasizes in her research on vulnerability and authenticity, people who set boundaries are not only respected by others, but are also seen as trustworthy. This is because boundaries reflect a clear sense of self and integrity. When you know who you are and what you stand for, you project confidence and self-assuredness, which draws respect from those around you. Boundaries also establish a clear framework for interaction. Whether in personal relationships or professional settings, boundaries define what behavior is acceptable and what is not. This creates a sense of predictability and stability in your relationships, which fosters respect. When people know where your limits lie, they are more likely to approach you with consideration and care. Example, in the workplace. In a professional environment, consistently enforcing boundaries regarding your workload and availability helps colleagues and supervisors understand your limits. If you've communicated that you don't answer work emails after hours and hold firm to that boundary, over time, people will respect your work-life balance. This respect leads to healthier work dynamics, where your time and contributions are valued. Example, in personal relationships. In personal relationships, setting boundaries around how you want to be treated, whether it's the language used in conversations or the time you need for yourself, teaches others to respect your emotional and physical space. Over time, this reduces conflict and creates relationships based on mutual understanding and respect. Improved mental peace, energy conservation, and emotional health. Another profound benefit of strong boundaries is the improvement in your mental and emotional well-being. When you have clearly defined boundaries, you protect yourself from unnecessary stress, emotional exhaustion, and mental burnout. Mental peace and clarity. Boundaries provide a sense of control and clarity in your life, reducing the chaos and confusion that often come from blurred limits. As Dr. Nedra Glover Tawwab writes in Set Boundaries, Find Peace, boundaries are essential for creating a life where your mental energy is preserved. Without boundaries, you might find yourself overwhelmed by other people's demands, emotions, and needs, leaving little room for your own peace of mind. When you set boundaries, you create a mental structure that helps you prioritize what's important. By limiting distractions, unnecessary obligations, and emotional drainers, you free up mental space for reflection, creativity, and relaxation. This mental clarity allows you to focus on your goals, personal growth, and self-care. Energy conservation. Boundaries are also a powerful tool for conserving your emotional and physical energy. Without strong boundaries, you may feel constantly drained by the demands and expectations of others. Whether it's emotional labor in personal relationships or taking on too much at work, lack of boundaries leads to burnout. Setting boundaries helps you manage your energy more effectively. You learn to say no to commitments that don't serve you and prioritize the activities and relationships that energize you. By avoiding unnecessary stress and emotional overload, you conserve energy for the things that truly matter, leading to increased productivity and emotional resilience. Example, emotional boundaries in friendships. If a friend frequently unloads their emotional problems onto you, without considering your emotional state, it can be draining. Setting an emotional boundary, such as saying, "I care about you, but I can't talk about this right now," protects your energy and mental well-being. Over time, this leads to a healthier dynamic where your emotional needs are also respected. Emotional health and self-worth. Boundaries are deeply connected to emotional health and self-worth. When you set boundaries, you are affirming that your feelings, needs, and well-being are important. This act of self-respect boosts your self-esteem and helps you develop a stronger sense of identity. As you consistently enforce your boundaries, you reinforce the message that you deserve to be treated with care and respect. Over time, maintaining boundaries reduces emotional turbulence. You become less reactive to others' demands and more centered on your own values and priorities. This emotional stability leads to greater resilience and the ability to navigate difficult situations without feeling overwhelmed. Example: setting verbal boundaries. Imagine someone frequently speaking to you in a condescending manner. If you let it slide, over time, this behavior can chip away at your self-esteem. However, by setting a verbal boundary and saying, "I won't accept being spoken to that way," you protect your emotional health and assert your self-worth. Consistently reinforcing this boundary creates a shift in how you are treated, and you feel more confident and valued. Healthier relationships and a more balanced life. One of the most transformative long-term benefits of strong boundaries is the impact they have on your relationships and overall life balance. Boundaries not only improve the quality of your interactions with others, but also create a life that is more aligned with your values, goals, and well-being. Healthier relationships built on mutual respect. Boundaries are the foundation of healthy relationships. When both parties in a relationship understand and respect each other's boundaries, it fosters trust, communication, and emotional safety. Boundaries allow you to express your needs clearly and listen to the needs of others, leading to a more balanced and harmonious dynamic. In relationships without boundaries, resentment, misunderstanding, and overstepping become common. However, when you consistently set and enforce boundaries, you create space for honest communication and mutual respect. This leads to deeper connections where both people feel valued and heard. Example: boundaries in romantic relationships. In a romantic relationship, setting boundaries around personal time and space can prevent feelings of suffocation or dependency. By saying, "I need some time alone to recharge, but I love spending time with you too," you're ensuring that both your needs and the needs of your partner are respected. This boundary creates a healthier dynamic where each person feels free to maintain their individuality while still nurturing the relationship. Achieving a more balanced life. Strong boundaries are essential for creating a balanced life. Without boundaries, it's easy to overcommit, neglect self-care, and become overwhelmed by the demands of others. However, when you set boundaries, you prioritize your time, energy, and well-being, leading to a more balanced and fulfilling life. Example: work-life balance. Many people struggle with maintaining a healthy work-life balance, especially when work demands bleed into personal time. By setting clear boundaries, such as not answering work calls or emails during personal hours, you protect your personal life and ensure that work doesn't dominate your life. This boundary allows you to recharge, spend time with loved ones, and engage in activities that nourish your soul, ultimately leading to a more balanced and satisfying life. Increased autonomy and freedom. Finally, strong boundaries lead to a greater sense of autonomy and freedom. When you have clear boundaries, you are no longer at the mercy of others' demands or expectations. You take control of your life and make decisions based on your own values and priorities. This sense of autonomy allows you to live more authentically and fully, creating a life that is truly your own. Conclusion. The long-term benefits of strong boundaries are profound and life-changing. By consistently setting and maintaining boundaries, you gain increased respect from others, improved mental peace and emotional health, and stronger, healthier relationships. Boundaries not only protect your well-being, but also create a more balanced, fulfilling life where you are in control of your time, energy, and emotions. Over time, these benefits compound, leading to a life of greater autonomy, self-worth, and happiness. As we come to the end of this journey on boundary setting, it's clear that boundaries are not barriers meant to isolate us, but bridges to healthier relationships, self-respect, and overall well-being. They create space for growth, clarity, and balance in our lives. At Holistic Literary, we believe that embracing strong boundaries is essential to living an empowered, fulfilling life that honors both your individual needs and the connections you share with others. Throughout this book, we've explored how boundaries reflect your self-worth, protect your emotional, physical, and mental well-being, and foster mutual respect in relationships. From the importance of proactive boundary setting to the long-term benefits of consistently enforcing them, we hope you've gained valuable insights and practical tools to apply in your everyday life. Setting boundaries is an act of self-love and self-care. It's a way to claim your time, energy, and emotional space in a world that often pulls us in many directions. By standing firm in your values and communicating your needs clearly, you are crafting a life that is aligned with your deepest desires and truest self. And in doing so, you inspire others to do the same. As you move forward, remember that boundary setting is an ongoing practice. Be patient with yourself, allow for growth, and revisit your boundaries as your life evolves. By consistently honoring your limits, you create a life of balance, harmony, and empowerment. A life that reflects your worth and nurtures your holistic well-being. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May your boundaries be strong, your relationships respectful, and your life filled with peace, clarity, and abundance. Holistic Literary Team.